Welcome to the fourth session of Just Game Masters. I am Darred, your host, with Branden as usual, and today we're joined by Nelson from Infinite Roleplay, and we're going to talk about 13th Age. But first, Nelson, could you tell us a little about yourself and a little about your YouTube channel?
Yeah, so as Darred said, my name is Nelson. I have a YouTube and Facebook thing under Infinite Roleplay. I have a Twitter, which I'm not that active on. That's under 8 Roleplay, because 8 is like a standing infinite sign. I thought it was cute. Anyway, I do, on my channel currently, I have some crafting videos where I actually handcraft terrain using variations of DM Scotty's and DMG's methods. I also cast using Hearst Arts. I make maps, I do character drawings, 3D illustrations, 2D illustrations, some animation. I have like a GM chat where I just talk about reimagining things, different approaches to RPGs, player hints and tips, and artwork, character artwork. I also have a drive-through RPG store that I started up recently, putting maps and adventures on that are either pay what you want or $1 for the most part. And I run and play a ton of games.
And where could they find you onto YouTube? The link will also be in the description of this podcast. Where could they find you on there?
You can just type in Infinite Roleplay.
Okay, all right.
And I should most definitely pop up.
Okay, and unless there's somebody who's masquerading as you, trying to make you, I don't know, bad joke. All right.
I don't know. If I have become famous enough where someone could try to take some of that fame, that'd be like a pat on my back. I'm like, what? I'm that cool? Awesome.
All right, so just a little bit about the background of 13 Age before we begin. So 13 Age was created by two guys, a Rob Hensu and a Jonathan Tweet, both of Pelgrane Press, and the book was published on August 3rd, 2013. Rob Hensu was actually the lead designer for 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons, and Jonathan Tweet was the lead designer for 3rd edition D&D. After they left the company, they went on to make Age. And a lot of elements from D&D could actually be found in 13th Age. So just to get the discussion rolling, Nelson, if a fellow roleplay gamer asked you about 13th Age, what's it all about, could you give a brief-ish description of it, you think?
See, the unfortunate thing is that you have to mention 4th edition, and people have some sort of horrid hatred of 4th edition for some odd reason. But 13th Age is more like the best parts of 4th edition, the best parts of 3rd edition, mixed in with some really, really great roleplay concepts and mechanics.
And Brandon, you can jump in here at any point in time. What makes, why do you think it's so unique as opposed to, your general D&D or your, general RPG besides, there's so many others like Shadowrun. Well, Shadowrun is a different category because that's cyberpunk. But, you have stuff like Play and Fantasy, D&D, Exalted, things like that. What makes, why play 13th Age as opposed to just D&D, for example?
Just D&D? Okay, well, the biggest difference between 13th Age and D&D in any of its iterations is the skill system. In 13th Age, they don't actually have skills whatsoever. They have something called like a background, where you have points to be placed in a background, and if the DM were to call for a skill roll, it would be a roll. You add your relevant stat, and then you would have to role play that background to the DM, and depending on how good the role play, how good the reasoning is, you may get a portion or the total of your background bonus to that skill roll.
And me and Brandon played I would just say it was a half game of 13th Age because there weren't that many people at role-playing RPG Day when our friend ran the game, unfortunately. We touched, I used my background briefly. I think I was playing like a sorcerer. I was playing two characters since there were the only two of us. So I was playing a sorcerer and I was playing like a ranger type deal. And Brandon was actually playing a warlord, I believe.
He was some sort of a military guy, like a paladin or something.
I think he was a warlord because you were able to encourage other people to attack on your behalf. That's how the warlord in 4E I remember remember worked when I
I
played.
outsourced it.
Yeah, I suppose they did outsource it. So how?
Well, the big since you mentioned that game we played at Roleplay Day, the big struggle I had was understanding the concept of the icons and are you the Empress, are you the dragon, or whatever. And I couldn't connect that to my character. They're called icons, right? Am I getting the term right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the icons.
Okay. Yeah, I'd love to hear more about that at some point in this discussion.
Well, should we just drop into icons
Yeah,
right
just
now?
drop in the
Sure.
icons.
Okay, icons is something else that's very different and unfortunately unique to 13th Age. The way, okay, let me just say this, let me get this feeling out first. I feel that the way they wrote 13th Age was to be almost setting agnostic, where the setting is actually suggested and certain parts of the setting are inferred, but allow the GM to put enough of themselves in the setting that each game would be different. That's my feeling. Now, shooting over to the icons, one of the ways that this is done is that instead of having, like in D&D, they have Elminster, right? Instead of having Elminster, you have the icon, the Archmage. Now, the Archmage is like a station. It is a general feel, a generalized character. Any person can become the Archmage. You know, any powerful mage can become the Archmage. In each story, the Archmage may be different. The Archmage may not even be there. But icons are like station. Different characters within whatever lore you wish to put in your 13th Age game can become those icons. The way they work during a game is that during a character creation, you get icon relationship points. So the icons are like the major heroes, the background, the forces in the game that each and every character has a tangible link to. It's not just, oh no, Elminster is Elminster. I don't know who the hell Elminster is. Maybe the DM might want to do something with Elminster, maybe not. You know, can I have a link to Elminster? Hey DM, I want to be Elminster's, great grandnephew. Is that No, what do you mean no? Oh man. Well, here you can choose to have a link to that icon, a link to the Archmage.
So,
Whether
like through relations, you said, or through you work for him or her, or
yeah, however it is, you can be an extended family member. Maybe you can work for an organization that they lead. Maybe you're one of his apprentices. There's a link, and that link can actually be used during gameplay.
All right, that's much simpler than I was making it out to be. All right, that makes some sense. So like there was one called I actually have it right here, the Queen, I think, or
The Elf
The Elf
Queen?
Queen?
Elf Queen or the Emperor. So the Great Gold Worm, you somehow relate to a dragon. Is that right?
The Great Gold Worm is a dragon. He's like the number one big boss dragon that is, he's a good dragon. Many paladins are tied to the Great Gold Worm. It's not necessarily so much as a connection to dragons as what that dragon represents.
Okay, so
Which
maybe he worships the same god as the dragon or something, or
no, you can have the connection to the Great Gold Worm, and the mechanics of it is that you have a limited number of icon relationship points. You either have beneficial, detrimental, or neutral relationships to these icons, which in roleplay can affect what's going on. But mechanically, when you use your icon points, for each icon point you use, you can add a 1d6 to your d20 roll to accomplish something.
Okay, and presumably, but not necessarily, a rogue would more likely have a Prince of Shadows be his or her icon than the Great Gold Worm. But again, not necessarily, depending on how his life has turned out, I guess. Maybe he's the redheaded stepchild or something. But that's an interesting, I won't call it a twist, but concept for the game. I like that.
Yeah, it's a very interesting concept and one that I kind of like, because if I know your relationships, I can, as a GM, sort of do certain things that may be relevant to those relationships in the game.
Well, is there, kind of along these lines, I'm looking through the book here, is there an alignment field, or is that kind of not used in 13th Age as we know it?
There is the alignments, the actual icons have specific alignment ranges.
Okay.
So it's kind of like, I would guess the alignments of your characters would have to reflect your relationships, but personally, I've never been a fan of any alignment system at all.
Yeah, I had one of my players recently told me, I asked him to pick any alignment you want, but try to be good aligned, and he said to me, I play personalities, not alignments. Okay, I hear what he's saying, but then I pointed to a t-shirt I have that says lawful good does not mean lawful nice. So I try to separate, I think alignments and personality are separate things. I'm not sure if that's what you're getting at, but I digress.
Well, see, I don't know. I can go on talking forever. Alignments, okay? The alignment system in games, or the way it's usually set up, is very much like 4th edition, for instance. When you see it and when it's presented to you, people tend to have a preconceived notion of what that means. It's that preconceived notion of what it means that I'm not a fan of. That's why I don't like using alignments, because it gets rid of that preconceived notion. You want to be a good guy? You want to have a code of honor? Do it. Feel free. Don't worry about it, whether you're chaotic good, lawful good, or just, I don't care. Do you, you know?
But in some cases, the alignment is the mechanic that restricts someone from being too powerful. Like in my game, for example, you have a cyber knight who's very powerful, but he has to be principled, which is basically lawful good. Otherwise, he's a walking tank that can do whatever the hell he wants. And so I think that there's a place for alignment as a mechanic, if that makes any sense.
It's like in older editions of D&D where
I'm
you
old.
had to be. Yeah, I understand. I'm kind of old too, but where you had to be lawful good to be a paladin, or where
Correct.
you had to be a lawful alignment to even be a monk.
Yep.
It's understandable, but in something like, even in those editions, I really didn't care, because you had to play a paladin that represented your god. Don't care what it was. If you didn't know your god's credo, the mantle of your god, if you did not represent that mantle, you lost your paladin powers. It doesn't matter, to me, it doesn't matter about the alignment. Role play your character. You know, if your character, if you have the god of war and you're hiding behind minions, then you're not representing what it means to be the god of war. You know, if you're representing Tempest, say in 3rd edition, right, and you're not challenging to single combat the biggest, baddest motherfucker on the field, then you're not representing that mantle. Then you don't deserve the powers Tempest would give you. It doesn't matter about lawful good, chaotic evil. I don't care about that. But that's me.
Right. So just let's segue into something else that you mentioned a little bit earlier about 13 Age, and what I find interesting is the backgrounds. So you mentioned that 13 Age doesn't necessarily have skill checks, in the traditional sense. You know, you put ranks in survival or knowledge nature or whatever. You roll that to see if you know stuff. I don't remember. I think I had put my background as like an master of the arcane or something when I played in that one shot, and I was able to actually discern some things about the enemies we were fighting or something like that. Why do you enjoy the background mechanic so much?
Because it rewards roleplay.
Yeah, that's true. Because you would have to, think about how your background would relate to the certain circumstance that you've been placed in, and I guess it's kind of like using what you have at your disposal, so to speak. But
It's not so much like, certain games, character creation, you get a certain number of points. You have to start allocating points. Some games you have half ranks, so okay, I want to add a half rank here because I'm not proficient in that one, and then I got to go back here and then add this. Oh, I leveled up. I get more skill points. Okay, there's 37 skills I need to keep track of. Oh my God, I got knowledge nature, but I don't have knowledge religion. I don't know nothing about religion. That's the minutia that bogs down certain other games or puts people in a different mindset, when in 13th Age, in the actual core book, they don't even have backgrounds. They just say, pick a background, make one up.
right. I remember writing slots for it. I'm like, what my sorcerer? I think my sorcerer was the one with the lisp. So I was like, what do I do with this? I'm on a boat. What do I do? Yeah, and fortunately, Brand
It's
L
like,
character.
okay, you mentioned that you wrote down that you were the master of arcane. That was part of your background, right?
Yep.
So let's say in a situation where, a survival situation, you're out, you have no supplies, you guys need to eat, you guys need to hunt. A master of the arcane wouldn't necessarily be a hunter, but there's probably some sort of alchemical experience in your background.
Yeah, that's true.
So you may know about roots and plants and whatnot. So at the very least, you can tell your DM, look, I want to forage for some food, but I'm a master of the arcane. I have some actual alchemical experience in my studies. Can I apply some or all of my ranks of master of the arcane to this foraging check? And it's up to your DM to say yes or no.
Yeah, that's pretty fair.
One thing I wish was that when we played that 13th Age one shot, we had more time to devote to building the characters. We basically took a stack of pre-gens and just...
Well, that's what you usually have to do in a one shot. You only have some allotted time, but
I understand, but I think I would have had a better appreciation for the game had I been able to make the character myself. I don't make a character just for fun, just to do it.
So, Nelson, I briefly spoke to you about character creation, and you mentioned that it was probably the hardest part of the game. Why?
It is the most, not necessarily hardest, part, but it's the most time consuming. 13th Age is very front loaded. Once you get past character creation, everything else is an easy ride. The reason being is because, very much like 4th edition, each class has a specific list of powers, skills, and spells and abilities that they have access to.
Right, I remember making characters in 4th edition, and, without the wizard's character generator, it just was like, oh, when will it end? Especially when I made characters of higher level. I just remember that was kind of a slog for me when I first started.
It's nowhere near as dense as 4th edition, but every character, every class in 13th Age has been made with a very distinct feel. Unlike, say, 5th edition, where a barbarian is kind of like a ranger, is kind of like a fighter, is kind of like a paladin, with small differences here and there. 13th Age, a barbarian is completely different than a fighter.
Does it have to do with its icons, or like whatever
It has
special things they get?
The icons are a separate thing.
Okay.
Barbarians, for instance, you can choose whether to or not to get the barbarian rage, but the barbarian rage in 13th Age works during a rage. You roll 2d20 instead of 1. If both d20 actually hit, it counts as a critical hit.
All right, that's interesting. I remember that was one of the complaints from 4th edition. All the characters. Well, I remember. I think Branden actually complained to me that all the characters, when it initially came out, seemed all the same ish. Like, everybody had encounter powers, everybody had at wills, everybody had their dailies, and the things that made a ranger or a wizard didn't feel. That was one of the complaints. I didn't have any complaints about that. Didn't feel significant. So if I'm hearing you out right, then the classes in 13th Age actually have a lot more distinction between between one another, as opposed to when 4th edition came out.
4th edition, the way they put together 4th edition, they gave everyone an arcane feel. They may have different skills and abilities, and if you really like delve into the separate classes, you notice the differences because they have different skills that work slightly different.
Right.
But the overall feel is everyone felt like they had some sort of arcane power.
Right. I also remember it changed after Essentials came out. I feel like they gave the classes a little more distinction between each other, but it's been so long since I've played a 4E game that most of my knowledge has gone into 5E, and I know Brandon plays mostly Palladium system now. So yeah, that was. Oh, we can.
How could you not? How could you complain on any other game?
I'm not. I know. I said about Palladium. It's not the system I like. It's the universe. The system is mediocre. I agree.
Are you a Rifts fan? Is that why?
Yeah, I play Rifts and Heroes Unlimited.
All right, well check it out. Rifts is actually coming out for Savage Worlds.
I heard that.
It'll be a ton better.
Yeah.
For that to come out. But we can go in that next time. But yeah, okay, characters. All right.
So
just as a for instance, I've never played a game of 13th Age. I've only ever run 13th Age. So as far as from a GM standpoint, I really don't need to know that much about characters. So I don't know every single one. With 13th Age and 13 True Ways being out, there's a lot of different things you can do. But for instance, in 13 True Ways, you have a monk. Monks are martial fighters. You would think a monk is very similar to a fighter, except with their fists. In 13th Age, not really so much. The monk's powers and abilities are actual attack, like monkey spins branch, and that has a very specific effect. And they have opening attacks, sustaining attacks, and like closing attacks. Each style has 3 forms, and as you level up, you learn more styles and their forms. You can intermingle them. So you'll have like an attack that allows you to move and hit somebody. Move to an enemy and attack that enemy, while the secondary attack allows you to attack, then move away, or attack and grapple or trip. A list of different things that you can combine with some really cool names that if you just say what you're doing, it sounds like a Shaw Brothers movie. Monkey spins branch, Great Bear crushes melon, like things like that, which I think are amazing.
Looking at the at some of these classes, look at Rogue, Bard, and Paladin. Yeah, the special abilities, the different mechanics for every one. They really are unique.
Yeah, that's
classes.
that's why it's pretty front loaded for character creation. Because all the classes are pretty damn different.
Yeah, which I like personally. I think that's a
Yeah, it's the things that you would normally also. Oh, I don't know if I'm segueing into things all over the place.
No, it's cool.
So
Don't worry.
forgive me, but the things that normally would be the standard things in games. Every rapier does the same damage and plays the same way, feels the same way. Every longsword is exactly the same. In 13th Age, the damage that weapon types do is dependent on the class. So, a two-handed weapon in a fighter's hand may do a certain number of a certain listed amount of damage, but it may do more damage for a barbarian because of their experience and their natural inclination to move towards that type of weapon. And it's not a specific weapon. Like a two-handed large weapon is just listed as a two-handed large weapon so that you can roleplay whatever that weapon might be.
And the effect of the weapon, does that vary depending if it's like a maul versus a sword, a blunt versus a piercing weapon, or is
that could be entirely upon the DM. If you fight, say, you're fighting
skeletons,
that's
blunt.
In the rules. Now we're moving on to the GM side of things. In the rules, damage reduction or damage resistance, it's not, for simplification's sake, which I understand, it's not listed to specific damage types. It's actually a static number. So they have damage resistance or damage resistance to a specific damage type, 16 plus, meaning you have to roll a 16 or higher on the d20 when you attack to beat their resistance.
Okay.
So it's a little bit more simplified.
Now, you keep mentioning that 13th Age is very front loaded. I get why you say that. That's from a character creation standpoint. There's a lot of upfront work. As a GM, is it very front loaded as well? Or is it.
As a GM, please, you don't even have to use any monsters in the book. You don't have to go for the bestiary. If you're the type of GM that likes to create your own monsters, your own adventures, your own traps, your own NPCs, your own fights, in the bestiary section, at the end of the bestiary, they actually have a chart. Can I get to it? I don't know. At the end of the bestiary, they have a chart that gives you a listing of levels, and it says the generalized stats. Hey,
do-it-yourself monsters, 252.
A monster of level 3 usually does 6 hit points, and usually.
Oh, look at that.
It has a listing for all that right in the core book. So you have a listing of resources for 13th Age outside of the core book that can do nothing but add, but are actually not even necessary. Which is for me, it makes me feel like a consumer that they're not trying to nickel and dime me, which is why I get more of the 13th Age, expansion stuff.
The 13th Age book itself is like, I'm just looking at the PDF. It's like 300 pages long. Do you remember how much the hard copies cost?
I got it when it first came out, so I can't really remember that far back.
As long as it's not over $50, like the DM's guide. Dear God.
Oh no. See, here's the thing.
$24.99 on Amazon.
No. You don't need. There is no DM's guide. There is no monster manual. No player's guide. There's not 3 separate books that all cost $50 for it's a $150 investment to play a game that, in all actuality, I play, I enjoy, I run. But if you get into the minutia of the game, I don't like it. I don't like the mechanics. They're overly simplified without being simple enough. It's a weird place for 5th edition. So it's not my preferred system, but it's a system that I have to use for a bigger base of players. Okay?
Yeah, I do agree with that. I mean, if you go into Roll20 anytime, go to the forums, go to LFG, it's mostly players looking to get into D&D. That's actually the reason I did the podcast last time is, give alternatives, because I really enjoy all these alternatives. 13th Age does feel like a game I would, be able to get into, because Brandon knows this. You might know a little about this. I'm an improv DM. I almost do no preparation before my games. I have 2 or 3 sentences in my head about how things are going to go, and then I just wing everything else. And, 13th Age sounds like, it could be pseudo to my style of play and my style of GMing. I would just have to learn stuff.
It'll definitely reward that back and forth between the GM and player as far as character interactions with the world and whatnot. Because it's built like if you're not the type of person that normally is inclined to do that, it actually encourages you through the way it's actually constructed.
Okay,
Oh,
right.
by the way, I just went to Pelgrane Press's website. It's $44.95 for the book and PDF together. But with that one purchase, that's all you really need
That's
to run.
that's very, very similar to, I'd say, like the Riffs, handbook.
No, Rift's is $30.
Well, I meant like you can get everything for less than
Yes.
$50 as opposed to, the D&D books which I have on my desk right now. Each one is listed at $50 and there doesn't even look like there's that much content to them. That's the
Oh, word. I could have just turned this book around. Oops. Oh, never mind.
It's okay.
You
But
recommend just looking at the sorry, Darred.
yeah.
Looking at the it's like Amazon the core book. You mentioned the 13 True Ways book. You recommend that book?
Okay, yes.
Okay.
Short answer is yes. What I would say is just get the core to start off with. See if you can get some players. See how you like it, how you enjoy it, playing, running, learning more about the system first, and then start expanding if you see that you enjoy it. The 13 True Ways it's mostly character stuff. You have the necromancer in there. You have the ranger, the druid, the monk. What else? Brain farting. But anyway, you have a bunch of characters in there, and they're all pretty different. The necromancer, of course, deals with the undead. The monk, like I said, has his attacks and whatnot. The druid, I don't know so much about.
Chaos
The druid,
Shaman.
yeah, I don't know too much about those because I got 13 True Ways right off the bat because of the monk. It was just so amazing to me. And there are also rules for cross-classing in 13 True Ways.
Oh, so they also have multi-classing options too? I did not
In
know this.
in the 13 True Ways book, yes, they do.
Oh, that'd be pretty
It's
sweet.
an added option into the game as well as a ton more classes.
So I have a question. So when I ran fourth edition back in the day, God, seems like so long now. When I ran fourth edition, I had the problem of meeting a lot of min maxers at D&D encounters, at other events. How does I mean I assume in 13th Age there is a way to min max your character, but how different is that from fourth edition if you remember?
I I I'm a power gamer. Why are you asking me? I don't have a problem with other power gamers.
I'm just saying that I found it more prevalent because when 4E came out, there was always the discussion I had with other people that it wasn't very roleplay friendly and it attracted power gamers. I have no problem with power gamers. I mean, I can, I'm not guilty, but I do it every once in a while, making sure
So
my
you're
class.
guilty.
Shut up. Making sure my class is optimized. But like, is it any different? Like how you would build a powerhouse, character in 13th Age? Or I mean, I'm not sure if I'm coming
See,
across clearly.
here's the thing. Yeah, I'm not sure if you're getting your from what you're saying. It to me, it's just a part of any game.
Mm.
It's not like a game of Fate where it's pretty much impossible to power game. To power game in a game like Fate is to roleplay.
Yeah.
All right. In 13th Age, I mean, you have listed abilities without any creative advice to how to run. If you just look at the book and robot it just out of the book, like a robot DM, it's actually built to have a lot of power involved. It's a power fantasy.
Okay.
Your damage, the damage you roll for your dice, for your weapon dice and whatnot, that goes up every level. Every 3 or 4 levels is a different tier of play. There's only 10 levels in the entire game. It's a very hard power fantasy right off the bat. You can run it however you want, but that's my stance on any RPG. But if you have a power gamer, like I said, there's stuff in the book that you could just use.
Right.
If somebody's min-maxed and they're killing your goblin horde, I think personally, so be it. I don't know how one person can kill 150 goblins, just like that, unless as a GM you let them. One thing that I did recently in an offline game was I put a horde of disembodied zombie hands to my players. And I said it was an environmental hazard. If they're power gaming, it's fine. The environmental hazard's all around you. There's absolutely no escaping it. You're going to take damage. It's pretty deadly when you think about, hundreds of thousands of tiny little claws digging into your flesh and ripping your armor apart. So they were level 3s. I looked at the chart. I said, all right, I'll do level 3 damage to them every round that they don't figure it out. I had given them clues and whatnot as to the solution. When they found the solution, they didn't take any damage. But things like that, how can you power game that?
Right.
You have to pay attention, and you have to react intelligibly to get out of situations like that. That's any game. If you're worried about someone trouncing through your system, you can just switch it up.
Okay.
Add some environmental effects. There's listed charts, like I said, at the end of the monster manual area of the book. At the end of the book, there's trap damage, environmental stuff, creature stuff, and then you can just pull the numbers right from there. And it tells you the level of what these things do. Like level 1 is this much damage. It usually requires this kind of save. It gives you a lot of hints to move you forward and mitigate the desired feel of your encounters. But it's not like you don't have to be true to form, so to speak. If you have level 2s, you want to throw something that's gauged as a level 5, do it. If you have level 5s, you want to throw some stuff gauged as level 1s, do it.